The only thing that we're interested in is putting money in your wallet. If you want to bet the fights, if you want to have a little bit of action, you are in the right place. With my partner, Ian Parker, I am Brett Okamoto.
We're ready to rock between our parlays, our props, our straight picks. It's time to make money. Let's go.
Let's go. UFC Best Bets here with you again for another week to talk about a little bit of action with my guy, Ian Parker, who tells us where to place our money, how to win some money. And we came close to a really good weekend last weekend, Ian Parker. We're going to get to this week's card, of course, with Holly Holm and Ketlen Vieira. But as we always do, let's take a quick look back at last week, which was not a bad week, but dang, it was close to being a really good one.
Yeah, look, Michael Johnson, we talked about that. That was my absolute favorite play of the week. He came through. He looked fantastic. Jandiroba, she did what she needed to do with the grappling. And we were literally a torn ACL away from over 2.5 rounds. But we also talked about Jan Blachowicz having the value. He did get it done. I thought he was starting to take over that fight. And look, 2 out of 3 is not a bad week. And Nick Maximoff led off that parlay in the wrong direction. We hit the rest, but one falls. It all falls. We get on back onto it this week.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you, man, I am slightly disappointed in you, Ian. Not because we didn't hit all those best bets. Of course, we're not going to hit every single one of them. But you should have made Jan Blachowicz a best bet, dude. You told me last week that he should have been a favorite. He was plus 160. If you think the guy should be a favorite and he's plus 160, that's got to be on your best bets, dude. Be better about just making choices on your best bets, because that should have been one, and we should have hit a plus 160 underdog for your best bet. That would have been fun to brag about. But however, we did give you good advice on the main event. Let's talk about this weekend's main event, Saturday at the UFC Fight Night Apex. It's going to be Holly Holm taking on Ketlen Vieira. Very interesting main event here because Holly Holm, still going strong later in her career, age 40. She's coming off of a long layoff. But she is the favorite, as she usually is. She is a big favorite here. Well, pretty relatively big favorite, minus 240 against Ketlen Vieira. Then you got Santiago Ponzinibbio taking on Michel Pereira. That's a very interesting fight. Curious to get your thoughts on that, Ian. Chidi Njokuani coming off of a 16-second knockout in his UFC debut. He's taking on Dusko Totorovic, a name that I like to pronounce very much. Polyana Viana taking on Tabitha Ricci, and Eric Anders taking on John Young Park. We'll talk about all of those, but let's start off with the main event, 135 pounds, Holly Holm, like I said, coming off of a little bit of a layoff, not a little bit of a layoff, 19 months, taking on Ketlen Vieira. She is a favorite in a lot of her fights, Ian, and has not always worked out for her. But if you look back on her resume, she has only kind of lost to the very best of the best. What do you think here at minus 240 against Ketlen Vieira, who is on a little bit of a run herself? She has usually been a favorite in her UFC fights. She's the underdog in this one.
Well, look, let's start off with Holly Holm here, the preacher's daughter. She is a former champ. She's done everything so far in her career, the crossover from boxing to MMA, and she's looked great along the way. And honestly, you would never think she was 40 based on the way she fights. She's an excellent striker. Her takedown defense has improved. Her fight against Irina Aldana, that was one where I was sitting there saying, this is going to show us, is Holly still here? Is she still title contender worthy? Because Aldana is considered a rising prospect. And Aldana went on and knocked out Ketlen Vieira before that. For me, this is Holly Holm's fight. Stylistically, this is her fight to win. I think this is a great matchup for her. Vieira is very physically strong. She's got good throws, good on top position. But her striking against Miesha Tate looked good, but the size difference is what mattered here. Holly Holm knows how to keep the distance. Her footwork is there. One of the best kickers in the game, between male or female. She is just fantastic. She's smart, high fight IQ, good cardio. She can go 10 rounds if she needs to. And rarely does she make a mistake. She knows when to get out of a bad position. She knows how to stay away from the clinch. So for me, I think this is Holly Holm all the way. I think she gets a decision win here. Again, she's got to just keep that distance, use her striking, use that push kick, and push the pace against someone in Vieira who doesn't throw a ton of volume.
Yeah, I'm going to get into the weeds here a little bit, Ian, but that's what we do here on betting shows, right? I mean, we look for value or lack thereof in every little intricacy that we can find. Do you think this line would be any different if they were fighting in a big cage? Because I agree stylistically that Holly Holm has the advantages here and she can keep the distance. This fight, to me, seems like it favors Vieira just slightly, though. Not that the stylistic matchup favors her. I agree. Holly Holm has a stylistic advantage. But the fact that they're in the smaller cage, do you think that the odds would be any different if they were fighting in the bigger octagon?
You bring up a really, really strong point with that, Brett, because the smaller cage, it gives Vieira an opportunity to not chase Holly as much. Holly is big on lateral movement. She is constantly moving, which gets exhausting. With a smaller cage, you can cut off that angle with using less energy, and you're able to get your hands on someone a lot easier when there's less ground to cover. So do I think the smaller cage helps Vieira to an extent? It has to. It absolutely does. There's less room that she's got to cover, less ground she has to chase. But again, I just think that Holly Holm's IQ here, along with her precise striking, I mean, again, it's so methodical, it's poised. There's always a reason behind every single punch, and she sticks to a game plan that's intellectually above most others when she does compete. So I'm still sticking with Holly here. Everything you said, extremely valid point. I like where your head's at. It's very smart. It's absolutely there. But I think Holly has just fought everybody, and I think this is just the opportunity for her to get this win, get a strong decision victory. That's how we're going to get those odds down a little bit and possibly contend for a title in the near future.
Yeah, and so your official pick here is Holm by decision. Can you? I mean, obviously you're dropping from minus 240 to minus 120, so you don't have to explain, why you like the pick, because it pays off a lot better, right? But when you're looking at it in terms of, 6 of Holly's last fights have gone the distance. Are you just comfortable with that just because of how frequently it's happening, or you just don't see a path to a finish for her? I mean, why are we going from a minus 240, maybe make a two unit bet on it or something, as opposed to putting our trust in that this fight's going to go 5 rounds?
Well, look, when you look at a fight like this, are you willing to lay down in a straight play 2-1 odds? I usually don't like that because, again, it's an MMA fight, and to what you said earlier, the smaller cage, maybe Vieira is able to get a couple of rounds by closing the distance and forcing a little bit of a clinch game where physically she may be able to impose her will a little bit. But the reason why I say this is most of Holly's wins have been by decision. Same thing with Ketlen Vieira. Outside of being knocked out by Irene Aldana, she's very hard to finish. Holly Holm was submitted by Miesha Tate. She's also, and obviously knocked out by Amanda Nunes. But both fighters are hard to finish. So when I kind of look into the analytics of this, I say, hey, look, let's look at how Holly usually does win, and it's by decision. Again, both women are tough, hard to finish. That's why I'm going with Holly with decision. Plus, we get way better odds.
Yeah. No, I do agree. A finish is always possible. It's MMA. Literally anything is possible out there. But Holm, especially when she's trying to be smart, like you said, her fight IQ, and this is a very, very important fight for her. She is very, very focused on reclaiming that belt. This is kind of a must-win. It is a must-win if she's going to get that. All right, let's go to a very interesting co-main event in the welterweight division. Santiago Ponzinibbio taking on Michel Pereira. You see the difference in age there. You also know that Ponzinibbio, since coming off of a 2-year injury layoff, he's 1-2 in 3 fights since. Michel Pereira has been the more active guy. He is on a 4-fight win streak. I got to be honest, Ian, I was expecting this line to be slightly bigger just because you got the younger guy in Pereira who's got the momentum. Ponzinibbio has not looked bad. In fact, I think he's looked pretty good in these 3 fights coming back from a 2-year layoff. But it just seems like, we're going, one guy's, it's one of these situations, right? You know what I'm talking about? Are you a little surprised that the line's not bigger, or we like Ponzinibbio as a dog here?
I like your hand movement. I think your hand movement, even if you didn't say anything, was pretty much exactly how to describe this thing. It's literally one's here and one's kind of just sitting right here with Ponzinibbio. It's hard. For me, you have such a question mark on both guys. You got Michel Pereira, who is the Cirque du Soleil of MMA. No matter how poised you think he's going to be, all of a sudden he throws in a backflip, or he throws in, some sort of capoeira craziness, or, one of those kicks off the cage, a Showtime kick, a Superman punch. However, the guy is really skilled. If he kind of hones in the circus act, has his cardio, and takes away from all the dancing and wasted energy, you have someone who I think can potentially fight for a title. He is huge for the weight class. Physically very strong. He's very skilled, whether it's on the ground. Sometimes he makes some questionable decisions, and we have seen in almost every fight, he tends to fade in the 3rd round a little bit. He's someone who's very hard to put away. Now, when you go over to Ponzinibbio, you have someone who I think has fought higher level competition for a longer period of time, who is also a very smart fighter. Excellent striker. Devastating kicks. We saw in his fight against Miguel Baeza, he still has that knockout power. However, he's taken a bunch of damage in those 3 fights that we've seen him come back to. So for me, the odds, I did think Pereira would be a little bit more of a favorite just because of the winning streak, just because of the rise and being on the up and up. But Brett, I'm not going to pick a side here because I just want to sit back and watch this firefight happen. I think both guys are extremely hard to put away. So for me, I think this fight is going the full 3 rounds. We have not seen Pereira finish one since he knocked out Danny Roberts, I believe, in his first fight. Ponzinibbio, Miguel Baeza, sure, outside of that. Decision. I think both guys are also going to be a little hesitant to feel each other's power in that first round. We've seen this a lot. We talk about this a lot. When you are ready to take that next step in someone like Pereira, and for a fight like this for Ponzinibbio that's equally important, sometimes these guys come out a little bit more strategic and hesitant to throw. So I think that first round is going to fly by pretty quick, and rounds 2 or 3 are going to be the deciding factor on who gets the decision win.
Interesting, yeah. I mean, every Michel Pereira fight is interesting because of the way in which this guy fights. But I do think he has actually fought smarter. I think he has fought more efficiently, especially over the course of this recent win streak. So, but Ponzinibbio, man, I'm not trying to put down anything that he's done at all. He's had 3 tough fights coming off of a big layoff, and he still has shown a lot of dog in him. There's still fight left. I just, that age difference and the tread on the tires, I wonder if it comes into play. To Chidi Njokuani taking on Dusko Todorovic in the 185-pound division. As I mentioned, Njokuani with a really nice debut, 16-second knockout. Todorovic coming off of a 2021 campaign in which he went 1-2. A lot of his fights end inside the first round, so curious to see if you like any of the totals here. Njokuani minus 230, so you got to pay a little bit. Are we paying that?
You know, it's hard to gauge and judge what he's going to do off of 16 seconds. This is someone who fought, I think it was, 23 pro fights before he got to the UFC, and he's been in other big organizations as well. We know he's a phenomenal striker. We know he carries extreme power. The question is, can he potentially defend the takedown of Todorovic, who does have good wrestling when he decides to use it? However, I don't think that's going to happen. I think you have 2 guys. One guy who has almost a 91% finish rate in Todorovic. The other one in Chidi who has 67% with finish rate. These guys are looking to make a statement. I know Chidi has fought his way here. And what he did in that last fight, he wants to prove that wasn't just a lucky punch. He wants to prove, I'm here, I mean it, and I'm going to be a threat. I believe him. I don't think this fight goes the distance at all. And look, at minus 240, I'm not recommending necessarily bet that straight, because it's a high-risk play. But if you're going to play this, that's where I would go with it. You could throw it in a parlay of some nature. I don't see this fight starting even round 3, Brett.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned right off the bat, I mean, Todorovic, a lot of his fights end inside the first round, and then we've seen the finishing ability of Chidi Njokuani. So, could be a quick fight there in the middleweight division. Let's go from there to the strawweight division. Polyana Viana taking on Tabitha Ricci. Viana had a 3-fight skid, but she's on a little bit better track here. She's won 2 in a row. She is 29 years old, taking on Ricci, who is 27. She drew a tough matchup in her UFC debut against Manon Fior. She lost that fight, but she has since come back. She is 1-1 in the UFC. What do we think about this 115-pound matchup, Ian?
You know, this is one of those fights where I'm not confident really any which way. We've seen Polyana Viana sometimes not look great, and then we've seen that armbar of hers. That seems to be her go-to, her real bread and butter here. But Ricci is someone outside of the Fiore fight that was finishing fights as well. Her striking looks polished. She's got a good submission game. I think her defensive jiu-jitsu game is good enough to fend off Polyana Viana's jiu-jitsu, and I think she'll be the better striker here. You know, we've seen this in the past where the fights go the distance with fights at this level. I think if I had to pick a side, and again, I'm not overly confident either way, but I would go Ricci in this fight if you do want to place a bet. I think she has more ways to win. I think she's more well-rounded. Just stay away from that armbar, and I think she gets the win by decision here.
That's good advice, man. I mean, we like to give people leans in every single fight, but if you're betting every single, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to try and profit if you're trying to bet every single fight on a card. So sometimes it is better just to lay back. But again, this is one of those situations. Maybe if you've had a great prelims and you want to keep the momentum going, then you maybe want to take a lean on Tabitha Ricci. All right, let's go to the final fight on the main card, which you can watch at 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN+. It is a middleweight fight between Eric Anders and Jung-Young Park. Eric Anders, he's 6-6 in the UFC. I'd say, Ian, that he's mostly followed script, man. If you look back on this guy's career, he has mostly won as a favorite. He's mostly lost as an underdog. The big exception to that was when he lost to Lyoto Machida as a pretty big favorite. That was years and years ago. Taking on Park, a guy who I don't think is going to jump off the screen at you with any one particular talent, but he is buttoned up. He's 31. He's at 18 pro fights, so he has some experience, and he is the minus 210 favorite here, which doesn't shock me. But is it too high? Is this too high for Jung Young Park over Eric Anders?
You know what? I'm actually surprised he's that big of a favorite coming off the loss to Gregory Rodriguez, because before that, he's on a 3-fight win streak. But look who he really beat. Now, that's not a knock on Park. These are the fights he's supposed to have when he gets to the UFC. I'm not saying rush the guy up the ladder, but he hasn't fought nearly the level of competition that Eric Anders has fought. And for me, if Park can't get Eric Anders down, if he can't put him on his back, I think Eric Anders is the better athlete. I think he is stronger. I think his striking is there. We saw in his fight against Darren Stewart. The cardio didn't look fantastic, but he toughed it out. If he puts Park on his back, I think his athleticism, I think his top game, pressure is enough to grind out a decision here. I think he carries more power as well. We see Park, he got a little bit reckless against Rodriguez, and that cost him the fight. So for me, at these odds, I got to go Eric Anders at plus 175. I thought this fight was going to be more of a pick'em. Both guys coming off a loss, but I think Eric Anders lost to a guy in Andre Muniz, who Muniz could be a future champ. Eric Anders has fought way higher level competition, and he is now in a camp. He's been there with Fight Ready. So I think with a camp like that, with Cejudo and Captain Eric, I think that his cardio just has to be better. The wrestling has to be better. And if he makes a little bit smarter decisions and doesn't just throw everything into every punch, I think this is a very winnable fight for him. And at plus 175, I have to take a shot at Eric Anders here.
I like it. I like it, man, of course. And you know what? This is going to test my criticism of you right off the bat. If you thought this is supposed to be a pick 'em fight and you're getting plus 175, I wonder if it'll be on your best bets. I think it probably should be if you're getting plus 175 value. But let's find out here shortly. Let's get to the parlay, though, first. That wraps the main card. Let's talk about your parlay. Love putting down these parlays, man. Love watching them throughout the entire night. What are we doing this weekend?
All right, we're going to start off with Jonathan Martinez. He is taking on a very tough opponent who's coming off a knockout win, but we've seen Martinez grow and improve. He's fought high-level competition. I think he can rely on his wrestling. As long as he doesn't get reckless, I think he's the better striker, experience, so we're going to go with him to lead it off. Back to Chidi in this fight. Dusko, we know what he does. He wants to get that knockout win. I think his ego keeps the fight standing, which favors Chidi in this fight, so we're going to roll with him to go on a 2-fight win streak in the UFC. And last but not least, I am really high on Holly Holm here. I think this fight plays perfect into her style, and that's going to wrap it up. Now, look, plus 196 for these 3 fights that are all 2-1 favorites. We just need them to win. Let's get back on that win streak this week, bro.
Yeah, seems very possible, man. Minus 200s over there. You only need 3 favorites to hit, and we're at plus 196. Yes, I like that. Okay, so we talked about the parlay. We talked about the main card. Only one prelim is on your parlay, but I know you have picks for each and every one of them. So let's go ahead and get to that. The prelims start at 4 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Plus. Take us through each of these prelim picks, Mr. Parker.
We're going to start off Holmes and Amandovski. I'm going under 2.5 here. Now, I know Holmes in his last fight was not all that exciting, but Amandovski will push the pace of that. I think this goes under 2.5. This is a fight to pay attention to. Jailton Almeida versus Parker Porter. Look, this fight's either going the full 3 rounds or it's ending in under 1.5. I think Almeida's jiu-jitsu is going to be too much for Parker. I like under 1.5 in this fight. Omar Morales and Uros Medic could be a fight of the night candidate. Do not blink. I'm going Morales. I think his leg kicks. I think he weathers an early storm and he gets the win later on. Martinez by decision here. I think this fight goes all 3 rounds. He does have a good chin. He gets a little reckless sometimes, but I think his growth, he's improved. Like him here. This fight's intriguing. Chase Hooper versus Felipe Colares. I'm going over 2.5. Most of Hooper's fights go the distance. I think he's able to stay defensive and not get knocked out. And last but not least, I'm going Elise Reed over Sam Hughes. Hughes is coming off the only win in her UFC career. However, that means she has to rely on her opponent gassing. I don't see Reed gassing at all ever. She's the better striker, and I think Reed gets the win.
I agreed with a lot of what you said there, especially Omar Morales and Uros Medic might be fight of the night, man. Can we get these guys on the main card? That is a main card fight to me. That is going to be a very, very entertaining fight between those two. Okay, so we've got we're getting down to the nitty gritty here. We're getting down to the business portion of this show. Ian, take us through your best bets for UFC Fight Night.
All right, here we go. Main event, Holly Holm by decision. By doing it that way, we go from -2 and change to -120. I like the way she's gonna stay smart. She wants to avoid damage, and she's gonna keep the distance, use her striking to get it done. Co-main event, Ponzinibbio and Pereira. Fight goes the distance at only -145. I am going Eric Anders. You're right, Brett. We talked about the odds. You kind of got on me about Jan Blachowicz, and I agree with you. I changed that last minute. I shouldn't have done that. So I'm going here at +175. I just think that fight should be a pick'em. Too much value there. I'm taking a shot on Elise Reed. Coming off that last fight, she showed a lot of grit. I liked her striking against a fighter in McKenna who, she was a big underdog when she won that fight. And as long as she doesn't gas, I think she's better than Hughes everywhere. But she's got to also avoid the takedown. Last but not least, Almeida and Porter. I am going with under here. I just think Almeida is in the same boat potentially as a Khamzat. Not right now, but this is a guy who wants to do it in both divisions. So far from what we've seen, he's an absolute monster. If that fight goes to the floor quickly, it's over quickly. And last but not least, the parlay. Holly Holm, Chidi, Jonathan Martinez. Let's get it done.
Let's get it done indeed. And you know what, dude? Hang on. Slow clap for you, because this is what we do. You'll learn. And I think a lot of people aren't going to believe me here, but I do not know what Ian's picks are. So I was giving him a hard time saying, Eric Anders better be on your best bets at +175. I didn't know if he was going to be there or not.
It's true.
He was. That's how we do it on UFC Best Bets. We learn from our mistakes. We're always getting better. We're trying to make you money. Hopefully we make you money this weekend. ESPN plus UFC Fight Night, 7 p.m. Eastern time is when you can see the main card. Goodbye. We'll see you next week.